Mrs. Rock here. Today we are going to use lines, patterns, and negative space to make a pattern puzzle. Get ready. Here's what you need. First step for my artwork is to draw 4 different kinds of lines down the short side of my paper. I'm using a black marker. You could use any color marker or crayon or colored pencil, whatever you prefer to draw with. I'm going to line up 4 fingers on the edge of my paper, and I'm going to draw a little tick mark to myself. That's where my first line is going to go. And I'm going to draw a straight line that comes all the way down my paper. And if my line's not perfectly straight, that's okay. I tried my best. My next kind of line, I'm going to line up my 4 fingers again, right next to that first line, and draw another little tick mark. This time, my line is going to be really curvy. A nice curvy line that goes all the way from one end of my paper to the other end. See how my line touches the edge of my paper? Okay, time for my next line. Again, I'm going to line up 4 fingers again right next to that last little tick mark I made, and I'm going to draw another little tick mark. This time, I'm going to draw a wavy line. This kind of line reminds me of waves at the beach, like waves of water. I have one more line to draw, so it's going to go right in the middle here, about 4 fingers again from my last line. This time, the line is going to be a zigzag line. Remember, a zigzag line doesn't have any curves, just straight lines and corners, and it goes zig, zag, zig. Now I'm ready to cut my lines. I'm going to use scissors to cut on these lines that go from one edge to the other. So remember, thumb through the small hole, other fingers go through the big hole, thumb is always on top. I'm going to open my scissors up wide, feed my alligator, and hold my paper as I open and close with my scissors. My left hand does a lot of work moving that paper around. Okay, there's one. Here comes the curvy line. My cutting hand opens and closes, and my other hand does the driving like a steering wheel, moving that paper around. Next comes my wavy line. Stop at the corners. Open up that alligator to feed my alligator. I'm trying my best to stay on the lines as I cut. And one more line, my zigzag line. Now I'm ready to add patterns. This piece of paper that has 2 straight edges, I don't need this paper, so I'm going to set it to the side. Now I'm going to add patterns to my pieces of paper using markers or crayons or colored pencils, whatever you prefer. I'm going to be using markers. So a pattern is a design that repeats over and over again. So a pattern could be polka dots. But whatever pattern I draw, I'm going to make sure that I repeat it for the whole strip of paper and that I'm drawing really neatly and my pattern goes all the way to the edge of the paper. I can even add another color on this one. Maybe a light purple is around my dark purple polka dots. Use your imagination and your creativity. I think this piece is going to have some diagonal stripes. And I want to make sure my pattern goes all the way to the edge of my piece of paper. Your patterns don't have to look like mine. They could be any kind of pattern you choose. Stripes, polka dots, zigzags, flowers. Patterns come from all different places in life and in nature. Now we're ready to glue our pieces of pattern paper to our background paper. You can choose any kind of background paper to glue your pieces of pattern paper onto. For this one, I chose an orange piece of paper. See how you can see a little bit of the background paper in between the pieces of pattern paper? That is called negative space. Negative space is the space in, around, and through an object in your artwork. So for this one, I've chosen a piece of kind of pinkish purple paper for my background paper. So I'm going to work on lining up where my pieces of pattern paper are going to go. Remember, I want to leave a little bit of negative space, a little bit of that background paper showing through. So before I glue anything, before I reach for that glue bottle, I want to make sure that I've lined up my pieces of paper so that they are fitting on the edge and that they're evenly spaced apart so that I can see some of that background paper, some of that negative space showing through. And I think I've done a pretty good job lining up my pieces. Oh, wait a minute. Does this one go like this? Nope, I've got pieces of paper overlapping and touching, and the lines don't line up. So I want to make sure, just like if I'm putting together a puzzle, I want to make sure that all of my pieces line up like that. Let's see, does it line up like this? Is it supposed to go like this? No. See how the edge doesn't line up here? And these two don't go together? I've got to move it back to the way it was before. And there we go. That's how it's supposed to line up. That looks much better. Now I'm ready to glue. I'm going to open up my glue bottle, give it the breathe test. It's breathing, it's working. And I'm going to go one at a time gluing my pieces down. So I'm just going to flip this piece over, turn my glue bottle upside down, let gravity pull the glue to the tip of the glue bottle. I'm not going to glue right on the edge of the paper. I'm going to come in about 1 finger width from the edge so my glue doesn't ooze out. And I am drawing with my glue bottle. My glue bottle is touching my paper, so I have control over where my glue is going, and I'm not just making a big puddle on my paper. And now when I pick it up, none of the glue drips down, and I have just enough glue so that my paper will stick. I've got to make sure when I glue it down that I'm lining it up with the edges of my paper. That looks great. Okay, I'm going to move on to my next piece, making sure that I haven't moved any of my other pieces out of the way. There we go. I'm going to flip this guy over, turn my glue bottle over. My glue is going to make that same wavy line and curvy line as I draw with my glue bottle. See, no mess, no puddles. And And see how it's kind of hanging off the edge here and not lined up here? I can slide it into place so that fits perfectly, just like that. Okay, next piece, flip them over and do the same thing again. And last piece. Sometimes if I have a little piece like this that I know it's going to be hard to get glue to, I just use the tip of my finger and smear that glue to the edge. Line it up with the edge of my background paper. So I'm covering up that edge and I've got this negative space in here, and flatten it down, and there we go. I'm all finished. What a fun project where I practiced my cutting and drawing patterns and gluing. And look, I made negative space. So beautiful. Well, I hope you had fun too. And remember, when you're creating, the possibilities are endless.